Take one. Hey, usually when I'm drumming, I'm in front of my drum wall over here. But today, I'm in front of my memory wall, accomplishments wall, whatever you want to call it. Just so what I'm going to talk about shows that I actually was involved in some of the things I'm going to be talking about. So over here is some of my military time here. Did actually 36 years total, Department of Defense. 4 years Vietnam Air Veteran Air Force, and 32 years Department of Defense civilian. GS, wage grade for a little bit, some GS time, but 32 years total in the Army and the Air Force. First, from military, enlisted to DOD civilian Air Force, then transferred over to DOD civilian Army, and then transferred over to DOD civilian Air Force again for the remainder of the 32 years. So where I retired. So, and that's over here is some of the Army things right here, and some of the Air Force things, some more of the Army things here, and some of the Air Force things here from civilian and military. So, but what I wanted to talk about today, while I'm drumming a little bit, is this thing about the UFOs, UAPs, and all the files they're going to uncover, they said, because the President of the United States has said, "Thou shalt be transparent." And now people are going all over the place. UFO Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, the media, social media, all that, getting all excited about those files are going to come out. They're going to show for once and for all. NHI, what is that? Non-human intelligence? I don't know. Anyway, and craft and what they call the legacy program, all that stuff that I've talked about every once in a while, not much. I used to get into UFOs a long time ago and kind of stepped away. I used to get into the paranormal, even actually more, a long time ago, stepped away from all that. And now I just do what I do, mostly drumming, and just kind of kick back and different hobbies and things like that. But seeing all these people get all pumped up about UFO/UAP, NHI, aliens, everything else, I thought I would come in here, and I've put some things on X and on YouTube. I've been watching some of the, News Nation reporters, some CNN, and I guess at Fox. Everybody's doing it. But I actually, this morning, I did a comment on a YouTube video about, can files be in the public sector that are involved with UFOs, UAPs, and all that. And I wrote the person back and I said, yes, likely they are too. And I talked about why. And I gave an example of the space surveillance network. And why did I do that? Because I used to support many of the platforms in the space surveillance network. Look it up, Space Surveillance Network, and you'll see the different platforms they've got. I think they got a Wikipedia page, and there's a lot on there about the different platforms, optical, radar, all kinds of stuff. So it's just, but I talked a little bit about that. The government and the private sector are both involved. Many most of those sensor platforms are run, operated and maintained by contractors, with government POCs involved at a lesser extent. You got way more contractors involved than you have government POCs, but you still have. And I was a government POC for some of those sensor platforms for different programs. I was one of the people that got information and procedural deliverables, contract deliverables from the contractors for the platforms, along with others involved on the platforms themselves, like anyone who's going to get the data from these sensor sites, Cheyenne Mountain and many others. There's others too that get that sensor data, and so yeah, that's in the public and the government side. So it's both. They capture, they deliver. And I was saying about how a central data library, in most cases, we called it a central data library that we set up. And the contractor put the information in there, and then it dispersed from there. And sometimes, dispersed other ways. But yeah, and did they catch UFOs? Yes, they did. And I talked about that a little bit on X and on YouTube. Yeah, they like the GEODs, for instance. GEODs, ground-based, electro-optical based deep space surveillance system. At the time I was supporting them, there was 4 GEOD sites around the world. Now I think there's just 3, because one of the sites we brought back, the one that was in Korea, we brought back, and I was involved in that. It was kind of cool, and we put that sensor site, sensor site, all the hardware up on a mountaintop at White Sands Range. It was an old laser facility. I guess they used the lasers a long time ago. Testing some kind of laser system. Big building up there on a peak on White Sands. And I was up there and looking around and taking inventory of all the assets that came from Korea for GEODs for that site, and making sure everything was there. And I'm looking out and I see this big circular area out there. I said, what the heck? And they said, oh, that's Trinity site. And the next day they took me out there on a special personalized tour of the Trinity site. And I'm sure you all know what Trinity site is. But we did that. So where was I with this? Oh, GEOD. So now they're down to 3, I guess. But yeah, there was a video I shared yesterday online from 12 years ago where one of the GEOD sites, probably the commander, he was military, is talking about what they capture, what GEODs is used for, and how, at that time, he says, yeah, we have 20 plus observations that are unaccounted for, are unknown, and we forward it here, and then they look at this and this. But yeah, it's out there on my X page. But he talked about that on there. Yeah, there's unknowns. GEODs. I talked with the guys too for GEODs, the operators. And I actually asked them, I go, do you ever capture any cool stuff that you don't know what it is? They go, yes, we do. And we talked about it a little bit. But that video came out and said what they did, and how they do it, and how they pass it on, where other sites check to see what, they're trying to determine what those objects are, is what they're doing. But they're UFOs, UAPs, so they had that in the system. So yeah, so you've got contractors gathering this data, putting it into some kind of a database, library, whatever, providing the deliverables to the contract, probably the contracting officer or those involved in the contract, where they can just distribute them around. But yeah, so that's just a GEOD site. And speaking of GEODs, I was involved in the upgrade, because for a while there they had those SIT tubes, silicon intensified target tubes, that they used on all the cameras, and they were kind of intermittent, and you would actually see anomalies sometimes. It wasn't anything there a lot of times, and so it's a long story, but a lot of reports were done with it, and they said, hey, and they got an upgrade. We gave them an upgrade for a charge coupled device to replace the SIT tubes, and that was done when I was there too. So supporting the GEOD site. So, but I've supported other sensor sites too. So I won't go into all that stuff because it's pretty long. I think I do have it on my webpage. If you go to MikeColetta.com, I think I've got a resume on the front page. It kind of shows the different systems I worked on and all that. And I think I got some pictures on there from my time in the military and DOD civilian. I think I got some pictures. So MikeColetta.com. So just want to talk about that a little bit. But yeah, it's kind of cool. So then today I was looking at another video. I think it was a CNN reporter. They went with the Secretary of War, and they went to Colorado. Oh, excuse me. So I was watching that video, and I said they were at Buckley. I had Buckley there in Colorado. I go, wow, Buckley does such a little bit of everything, but Colorado is full of things that are involved with space, and you got well, now it's Space Force, but you had the Air Force Space Command there that I used to support. It was still Air Force Space Command back then, but there's also on Peterson. Now I think was it Peterson Space Force Base now, but it was Peterson Air Force Base when I was there. We were in a building, a logistics building, away from the headquarters of Air Force Space Command. But I'm telling you, you've got a lot of companies in Colorado that are involved in all this data. So when they're going to look for all this data for what President Trump wants them to be transparent about, there is so much out there. Some of the data has already been picked up by these civilian and / government organizations with Arrow and all this. They've got a lot of that stuff, but I know there's probably way more out there. It's going to be one heck of a task because you got contractors, facilities on probably all over the world that is gathering data for different things, because a lot of these sensor sites are all over the world. They're just not in there in Colorado, but Colorado has a lot of facilities, government and contractor that are involved in space surveillance and many other space / cool stuff. But yeah, so they're going to be looking for a while. There's a lot of stuff out there. Like I said, our building was on Peterson on one side of the base, while the headquarters for Space Command and all that was on another side of the base. So you get people, a giant building full of contractors and mostly government on one side where I was, that supported a lot of the logistics, operations and maintenance of a lot of these sensor sites and many sites. I mean, it's just satellites. I mean, you had GPS, you have all kinds, missile warning, space surveillance, launch test range, space lift range there, GPS I told you about. I was part of that, the ground system. I was actually in GPS ground system, missile warning, space surveillance before that, and then launch test range after that. I was actually in the space weather program for a while too, and space lift range after that. So there were so many programs inside the building that we were in, not even counting the Space Command building and Cheyenne Mountain and Schriever, Falcon. It used to be Falcon, now Schriever, and just there's so much up there. So this CNN reporter went with the Secretary of War to Buckley, which is north of where we were on Peterson, up in Colorado. But there's so much more. Like I wrote on her post on X, I said, yeah, it's cool, but there's a whole bunch more buildings, facilities in Colorado that I'm assuming they'll eventually contact. And then you've got the East and the West Coast ranges, Patrick Air Force Base, Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, Kennedy Space Station Center. Then you've got Los Angeles Air Force Base out there. You've got Vandenberg out there. There's so much because of our systems went out there. I had my East Coast and my West Coast counterparts also on those in California and Florida. So I had those people too that were my counterparts that I worked with. This is a massive effort. That's all. I think I'll just end it on there. This is a massive effort, and if they need to talk to the right people, the right places, because there is so much data out there that people don't even probably know about where it's at, where it's captured from. It's just amazing. But yeah, I just wanted to give some, because it's so talked about right now, and everybody's talking about this new transparency disclosure. I'll tell you what, this is massive, way more massive than people who never worked in this area. This area can even fathom. So it's a big thing. So it's going to take a long time, and you're going to have to be patient, and you might not get the outcome you want. So hey, just wanted to talk a little bit. That's all. There's so much more I could say, but there'll be podcasts, there'll be YouTube videos, there'll be all kinds of stuff. And I used to do Space Gab podcast a while back for a number of years. And I quit that, but I figured I'd go, you know what, this is kind of cool. And I was involved in a bunch of this stuff that probably a lot of people don't even know where to look. They don't know where to look. So you need to go to these facilities in Colorado, California, Florida, and elsewhere, all around the country, and say, hey, what kind of data do you have out there? You know, what do we need to look at? Because there's a lot of stuff out there. You know, probably most of it's just benign. It's just like, you know, you're just gathering objects, satellites, and things like that. So, but you never know. I don't know what they're looking for sure. I don't know. I'm not into that UFO stuff as much though. Although every once in a while we talk about it and I write about it. Oh, the legacy program. That's another thing. I love how they're talking about the legacy program. Yes, our division was involved in the legacy program, but it's not what the people keep thinking it is. Oh, it's reverse engineering of alien craft and all that. Well, it was reverse engineering. Yeah, the legacy program. I don't know how they started all this out, and I've written about it on numerous times. The legacy program was about maintaining the obsolete systems, you know, the tracking, the space support systems, different systems around the country, around the world that were needing upgrades. And so they were the legacy program. Sometimes we had to reverse engineer things and build new things and design new things and figure out new things. But that was the legacy program. They said, Lockheed Martin's involved. Yeah, Lockheed Martin was involved. Yeah, there was other contractors too. I actually shared a whole list of contractors that were involved in the legacy system one time. But it's not about reverse engineering of UFO and with skunk works out there. And unless I don't know about it. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, that's another thing. Need to know. If you get a government person that comes out and says, I know this and I know that, and I worked here and I worked there and I know all about this stuff, find out what their need to know was with the career they had, because they're pulling your leg a lot of times. If they didn't have a need to know certain things, they're not going to know. They're going to make stuff up. I don't know. I'm not going to say they're all like that, but I'm seeing many out there. Some big names. I'm thinking, give me a break. You weren't even involved in this and you had no need to know this stuff. And they're making it up for books or for movies or this or that. I'm not saying all of them. Maybe some of them do know something. I don't know. But I'm not going to get deeply involved in that. It's just a need to know. Did you have a need to know? How would you get this information? How would you do? And you've got a lot of people just jumping on the bandwagon with their podcasts and their videos and all that. They just want to, I got a whistleblower here, I got a whistleblower there, and they will just fall for this crap. And they will give you a bunch of crap too, some of them that are actually posting this stuff, you know, trying to get clicks. I could say more probably, but I really don't want to. It's kind of interesting because this is massive. This is massive. Hey, have a great day. Good vibes your way.